welcome to the finals of Whisper in the Darkness, and we have a match between red-green goblins and Terrageddon. The red-green goblins we saw in an earlier match, and same with the Terrageddon deck. And if you haven't seen the other matches, I would highly recommend going to see those before you watch this final. Goblins is a typical goblin list, red and green. We sadly do not have the lists, but if a player wants to drop a list of their deck below, it would be really appreciated. I know that Jens, who is the player on the right, I do not have the name of the player on the left, but Jens on the right here is playing, I believe it's a 1-to-1 copy of the deck Martin Berlin won the British nationals or English nationals. I don't know what you'd call that, but the big nationals tournament in London. So he does have these wild mongrels in his Terravor deck, which I find quite good in the 2-mana slot, which you only use for Sylvans most of the time, and some play some Werebears. I don't think they are that good. He is taking some time to figure out what to do here, but I would definitely use my first turn on killing a Goblin Lackey when you are in a sort of the control role of this match, which you often are when you're playing Terrageddon against Goblins. This is game 1, so he only has 4 Swords to Plowshares as his removal, so he needs to figure out what he's going to actually kill with them and what he can withstand. Going to discard another land here. This is why the Moxen are not the best cards in the world, because he's deploying a 2/2 here, which requires to have some cards to sacrifice or discard from your hand. So playing on the same axis as Mox Diamond with being card disadvantage to gain some advantage in the match. But a wild mongrel is like a huge threat against goblins, because figuring out how to block it becomes a nightmare. Playing a War Chief. So does he... no, he does not attack. And Jens finds... Or what does Jens do? He put down his deck again. But it looks like he fetched. So might want to go grab a forest while he can. No, a plains. A plains for another sword here. He's being aggressive. He wants to stay clear of as many goblins on the field as possible. Maybe signaling that he doesn't have his Terravor yet. But Terravor into Armageddon in this situation would probably be GG. Swings for 2. Down to 21. And a Terravor, which is a 3/3 creature here. We have a fetch land and 2 lands discarded to Mox. By the way, this playmat on Aarhus Onslaught, I guess it says 3rd, was won well in the tournament Aarhus Onslaught. And if you want to get your hands on that, you might want to consider going to that tournament. I think by now it's definitely like a waiting list sort of thing, but it's happening in Aarhus, Denmark in September, October-ish. You can find information on both Facebook and on the Discord. And on the Discord, it has its own thread. So if you want to prepare some trades, or if you want to get a maybe carpooling or something, you could go there. If you want to have a link for that Discord, please let me know down below. Okay, another wild mongrel with a Terravor in the middle. Sharpshooter not doing much here. And yeah, that's probably not going to be a big problem in this instance. Jens takes a read here. I would say you most often see this against decks with big artifact creatures that are 12/12 shrimps. But I guess artifact removal is something that is dangerous in this position for Jens. Figuring out what you want to do here. This position as a Goblins player is a nightmare because you don't know what is in the hand of Jens, and if he discards lands, he can just grow the turtle. Here we see a Mark Fanatic blocking, shoots the turtle. Sharpshooter shoots and untaps and shoots again on the turtle, so Jens needs to discard a land here. He's forced to do so. Yeah, no, okay, discard naturalize to just get more damage in. Fair enough. And Pyroclasm clears up the board because a Goblin Sharpshooter can shoot once again. And that's it for Jens. No cards in hand and only 3 mana sources. And our Goblins player has 2 cards in hand, nothing. Ports. Can only port lands, so at least Jens has some artifacts that are non-portable. Wooded Foothills. Fetch. For a forest. Okay, do we see a naturalize on one of the mugs in here? Maybe we do. Yeah, we do. Yeah, so he's trying to totally poncer out the Terror deck, which is usually the role of... usually have the role of destroying lands. But I guess with Port, Wasteland, and Natural Ice, you can kind of do that. Another fetch. Thinning out his deck. Just want to have Goblins on the top of the deck, I guess. And that main deck, Pyroclasm, is such a nice card against Goblins here. Can also be a hell of a card against Elves, of course, but this deck is tuned quite well against Goblins. But it doesn't look that good right now. He has no pressure and let go of those dogs. Okay. Lackey. Sylvan. Swings. Dropping a lackey from a lackey. You don't see that quite often. But I guess it's at least a clock. Looking at cards, he has plenty of life to spare. Plenty of life. At least there's a step so he can... It would be nice to cycle a step when your mana is being tapped anyway. But a fetch is also nice to get a shuffle effect. Maybe you should take those two. And leave whatever the last card was on top. No. Okay, he took 1 card. And it was, in fact, the Windswept Heath. So he is able to fetch away all those unwanted cards on top. And when, if or when he gets to deploy a terror, it will be quite big now. With fetches from both sides. You need to be wary of that as a player facing terror decks, that you're not like contributing to a powerful creature that you cannot deal with. You have gem palm incinerator, you have to like incinerate it twice or 3 times here. Shuffle, 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 and port action. Taking 1 card. Okay, that's an Armageddon. He can't deploy Armageddon in this situation here when there are lackeys. He needs to have Terror first, or just an elephant maybe, and then deploy an Armageddon. Any creature, I guess. Just Windswept Heath and pass turn. So we will see him fetching for maybe the last basic. Does he have 4 or 5 basics in this version of the deck? Going to 13 here. No elves, oh sorry, goblins are dropped. No elves either, but I would not see, we will not see any elves in this particular matchup. Finding a plains. And then what? Sylvan is doing work here. Port. Porting the plains. Doesn't care about the green mana. That's a terror, isn't it? I cannot see what it looks like. A green creature. Can also be a dog. Could be a dog. He needs some pressure. Could also be nice with dropping an elephant, maybe. No, it's a terrible. And it's a huge one. I'm not sure how huge. You can count the graveyard. But yeah, nice. The players are doing that for, so it's a 7/7. So 4 incinerate? No, matron. If he finds incinerate here, that is mental. Then he can double. No, he cannot double incinerate. No, okay. He's trying to go wide now. And maybe swing with both lackeys here to get it into play. At least in the finals here, we don't just see a deck getting steamrolled in game 1 and game 2. We do have a long one for you here. Siege Gang in the hand. Yeah, okay, so he swings with both, blocks one of them, takes 1, and trigger on the stack, put a Goblin from your hand into play, put Siege Gang into play. Now he can double incinerate. Oh, he can just single incinerate. There's 1 damage on the Terror. There's a damage from the lackey. And 6 damage from incinerate here. That's mental. See, I would never figure out that you shouldn't block here, because he could incinerate you because there's a Siege Gang. He knew about the Siege Gang, but he probably didn't think of that line. So desperately needs another creature here. Desperately needs a Terror more, or 2. He'll have only 1 land ported here. So what does he do? If he... Yeah, okay, gemstone. If he can... Okay, that is also a nice inclusion here. Martin Berlin did it. He did include this as well. And Earthquake is such a beating for goblins. You don't have any flying goblins. That would be hilarious, though. But they all die, and then Armageddon here. That's it for the board, and we kind of start over. Although there's a Mox and a Sylvan, so he can mess with the draws, and he has all the mana in the world, or at least all the colors. A wild mongrel. Nice. So there's a clock now. Although he's at 3 life, there is a clock. Yeah, nothing interesting here. Swings for 2. We can see all the dead draws as fodder for the wild mongrel here, as food for growing it. Yeah, kind of nothing here. Again. Oh, no, not nothing. We saw fetch. Not sure if there are any more fetchable lands in the deck, but also a Kaplusen. Kaplusen. And Port. 3 mana. War Chief. Has haste, so he can swing. You could just swing here. And it's sorted. Okay, so buys another turn here. He's at 7 again. This is getting close. This is close, but man, that Goblins player got like the perfect draws in like getting back from that Armageddon, or he just sandbagged a bunch of lands, called the herd. So we have an elephant and a dog. Matron, what can you find that stops this? Skirk Prospector. Okay. And place it immediately. So he has a bunch of mana next turn if he sacks his creatures. But now what? Is it a stalemate here? I would probably just swing. But then he's opening himself up to dying on the backswing. He needs to keep a blocker back. One hasty dude or a Mach Fanatic, and he's toast. So Jens is figuring out his outs here and figuring out if he should swing or not. He is a good Magic player. I've played with him or against him several times. He doesn't make many mistakes. But what would you do in this situation here? Also, I would say if you have hung around for this long and seeing these series from tournaments, and you like to see these series, please consider subscribing. I do appreciate it. And maybe dropping a comment. That would be nice as well. Maybe you can drop a comment and tell us if you agree with this attack or not. So he swings, drops a treetop, and pass the turn here. Porting the port. Okay, fair enough. Setting up a treetop swing for next turn. He is dead to War Chief, or to... okay, he's probably dead to Siege Gang here. Or is he? Siege Gang is dangerous. If he animates and swings, he has a 3/3 trample, but Pyrokinesis could be... No, you wouldn't play that in main. Yeah, okay, animate and full swing. Denying the swing back here because he needs to block, at least chump block the elephant and the dog here. Okay, doesn't just trade. Doesn't trade anything. Takes one from trample damage. Wasteland. Okay. And now what? Can you deal enough damage? Siege Gang again. Same procedure. And we have an extra Goblin token here. And I guess he's saying that this token from Danish Nationals is the one that has not just been summoned, so it doesn't have summoning sickness. Swings for 1 here. And Jens is at 2 life. Looks rough here. He needs to just full gas attack, because if you don't force the blocks, Siege Gang can just throw goblins at his face with its activated ability. Both players are under a lot of pressure here. I guess people were standing around cheering and watching, and we see swinging for 8 damage. Jumps, takes 1, and then Goblin player is dead. No, sorry. Okay, trades for treetop. He needs to do that unless he will die. Okay. The 1/1 that stood. And do we have a mark? No. Okay, that is mental here. We have a charm. We have a pump effect. And that is a pump effect for the win here. Sick game. 1-0 for the Goblins player. And if you are playing MTGO or Magic the Gathering online and are using a rental service, or if you want to do that, I have a link in the description for a referral and a coupon code which makes you get 30% off on your next subscription. So consider that, and onto the video. Now to the sideboard games. Here we start with a mulligan to 5 on the right side. That's not what you want to see in a finals. There are people watching here, and you have that combined with the camera to make more pressure out of a finals. But a gemstone and a fetch and a Mark Fanatic, that almost looks like Sly there. But we do see a Sylvan. That's important. Well, the Goblins player is not that aggressive here, so he might be able to take some extra draws from Sylvan. Probably couldn't do that if the Goblin player deployed a Lackey, but I think we saw some Swords to Plowshares in the hand of our player to the right. But now what? Do we have a Pile Driver? That's a nice follow-up. Swing for 1. So first blood. Although he did take one himself from his own fetch. But first connected creature damage, which is how this game will go down. Ship to turn and ports the colored source. Interesting. Maybe hoping to get a War Chief next turn. Okay, takes no extra draw here. Wasteland, setting back the Goblin player a turn here. And enabling more mana to yourself, because port is... well, it can be frustrating to play against port. Mountain was found. And we see some shuffling. And a cut. You always want to keep sure that you cut your opponent's stacks. Mark Fanatic and Mark Fanatic. So this is just Mark Fanatic party, and maybe an elephant token could stop this. A Wild Mongrel would definitely be scary here. Could block for a reasonable amount of time. Oh, that's a Pyroclasm. One of his sideboard cards. Okay, doesn't take the extra damage. And Pyroclasm. Getting rid of the board. No lands. Okay, no land drop here. No land drop and a gemstone mine on one. Matron. So... is Matron okay? Matron is okay. It resolves. And what would you find here? You can stop the video and maybe comment down below. You can also just see here what a Goblins player would do. And a Ringleader is found and put into his hand. And, well, Ringleader is nice in this situation if he has another land. So Jens knows that there is another land in the hand of the Goblins or Goblin player. Gemstone. Terrible. Getting rid of the land here. There are... how many? 5? Yep. So we do have a 5/5 trample. That could become a problem. So now the Goblins player needs to go wide. You cannot top this. Okay, Ringleader. Land. Goblin. Goblin. Spell. Non-creature spell. Oh, no, that's not a Goblin, sorry. Okay, so he got one Mark Fanatic from that. That's not that frightening. Maybe he has more up his arsenal in his hand. It's a little glary, but I think we see another one. I think we see another Ringleader. Okay, I'll play it to the right. Takes an extra draw here. Gemstone. Borrowing a dice. And then what? Hope that the Goblin player won't have another land. And maybe just port. Swing and port. And if you port with... well, he did have... okay, he could port and then hold up for Swords to Plowshares. I think that's in his hand. Okay, does that. And Gemstone down to 2. Tapping the black mana. But he can play instance. He doesn't. Goes to draw step. And straight into main. Tapping 1. Okay, that's a slow one. You want to see that Goblin in your turn 1. But yeah, okay, with Skirk on the stack, he removes a goblin, and then a lot of 1/1s and a 2/2 against the big terrible. So now that's an Armageddon. Does he have another land so he can Armageddon and win this race? Although Skirk Prospector adds mana. He needs more mana. But I think the Wasteland was a necessary thing to just pop when you had the chance there. So now what? What are your options? It's only 5 mana on the board for the, or 5 power on the board for the Goblins player, but he could jump. Then adding mana with Gemstone in, well, before damage is dealt could be a way to deal with that. But the Goblins player is not falling for this. This is a finals, so he knows what he's doing. Mongrel. That's a creature. That is a creature. Great 2/2, and especially against this Goblins deck. But stuck on 3 mana is not very nice. Incinerated. Get out of here. So incinerate the dog, and adding 3 mana, maybe a... No, we see this creature. I have no clue what this creature is, and neither does our player here. Or is it a creature? It's not a goblin, which we saw that it was put to the bottom with Ringleader. What is this card? Please let me know down below what this card is. I have no clue. And I cannot recognize anything in the art. I'm sorry about that. I should be the one in the know here. But it's certainly not something our player on the right is happy to see. Is it one of those cards that just steals a creature? Okay, so Threaten, is that it? Yeah, got to swing against himself there, so against a 2. Is dead on board here. But he could have more creatures. Could have another mongrel maybe. Could have an elephant. Or that. I've never brought this in against goblins, but I think it works. Surinop. Sacrifice a land. Gain 2 life. So grow your Terravor. Gain life when you really need it. So now Jens just needs more land. We saw a fetch on top, but if he goes to 1, there it is again. There it is again. Third one we've seen. And there's a laughter. And yeah, doesn't look good. So does he sort his Terravor? He probably has to. It's his only out. So adds mana, which grows the Terravor, and then sorts to Plowshares to buy some more time. Yep. There it goes. 6 life. 2 for 1. 3 for 1 with the land. And now he's at 4. Does he get to draw a creature of some sort? He can't draw both a land and a 3-drop, so Wasteland. And then what? He'll port and then use his last colored mana to what? No, okay, so he just sacrifices Wasteland for life. 2 pile drivers. That is difficult to answer. So now a Pyroclasm has to be on top here, or else Jens will die. Pyroclasm or bust. It's a bust, and we have a winner. It's a Goblins winner here. I've heard that this was a nice tournament, 30 players, so I've been informed, and really good times. It was a side event for an old school event called The Whisper in the Darkness, or in Darkness, and here are just 2 pictures from the event with the winners in the last one. See you, bye.